Welcome to Social Influence, Lesson 2, Explanations for Conformity. This covers informational social influence and normative social influence. My name is Nick Redshaw. I have over 16 years of successful experience of teaching A-level psychology, and I am author of the highly successful Independent Learner series. Explanations of why people conform to social influence. People conform to social influence by adopting the behavior, roles, or values of the majority within the group. Deutsch and Gerard in 1955 recognized that individuals conform to the majority within a group, to be liked and to be right. From this basic human need, they proposed two explanations for why people conform. Firstly, normative influence. Here, an individual will act in a certain way in order to be liked and fit in with the majority of the group, so they don't stand out. For example, if a social group is acting aggressively, then the individual, so as not to stand out, goes along with the behavior. In terms of Kelman's types, normative influence leads to compliance and/or identification. There will be a superficial change in behavior in public, although their private beliefs remain unchanged. As a result, the compliance is transient and disappears when they are away from the majority group. Secondly, informational influence. An individual does not want to look stupid and wants to be right, so they use the majority as a source of information, and they will look to other individuals within the group for knowledge and guidance. For example, when starting a new job, a person will seek guidance from more experienced colleagues. In terms of Kelman's types, informational influence will lead to internalization, as it produces a permanent change in behavior and beliefs both publicly and privately. However, in reality, there is likely to be an overlap between the two types of social influence, as we often look to others for information because we do not want to appear different and stand out from the group. What I'd like you now to do in your workbooks, complete the following tasks. So you may wish to actually pause the video at this point. If you haven't got one of our workbooks, you can buy them off Amazon, or alternatively, just use a piece of paper. Your teacher may have also downloaded our workbooks from tests and printed them out. So, if you'd like to have a go at these questions. Firstly, explain what is meant by informational social influence. Okay then. So this question in the exam is broken down into 2 marks of AO1 and 1 mark of AO2. The first mark of AO1 would come from a general definition. Informational social influence is when an individual look to others in the group for knowledge and guidance, as they do not want to look stupid. The AO2, i.e. application, comes from you offering an example. So, for example, when starting a new job, a person will seek guidance from more experienced colleagues. You're now on 2 marks. The third AO1 mark, informational influence will lead to internalization as it produces a permanent change in behavior. So you're just providing the examiner with that little bit more. So simply, informational social influence is when an individual will look to others in the group for knowledge and guidance as they do not want to look stupid. For example, when starting a new job, a person will seek guidance from more experienced colleagues. Informational influence will lead to internalization as it produces a permanent change in behavior. Okay then, have a go at the next question. Explain what is meant by normative social influence. And remember, same thing for the 3 marks here. AO1, a brief definition. AO2, an example. And AO1, how it relates to Kelman's types of conformity. Okay, so you may want to pause the video again at this point, but give it a go. Okay then, So the first AO1 mark, normative social influence, is when an individual will act in a certain way, copying or imitating the behaviour of others in the group in order to not stand out. The AO2 mark, for example, if a social group is acting aggressively towards a smaller group, the individual will join in so as not to stand out. And the final AO1 mark, normative influence, will lead to compliance, but in the absence of the group, the person may not be aggressive. So again, simply, normative social influence is when an individual will act in a certain way, copying or imitating the behaviour of the group in order to not stand out. For example, if a social group is acting aggressively towards a smaller group, the individual will join in so as not to stand out. Normative influence will lead to compliance, but in the absence of the group, the person may not be aggressive. Okay then? So, have a go at this next application style question. So Jane has started a new job and wants to be liked and fit in with the group. Explain what she needs to do in order to achieve this. This is 2 marks of AO2, application. Okay then, give it a go. Okay then, so this question, there are 2 possible answers. Either a normative influence answer or an informational influence answer. So whichever one you've gone with, it isn't necessarily wrong. Okay, so simply, Jane will need to look to more experienced colleagues in the group for knowledge and guidance so that she does not come across as stupid. Once this information has been internalized, she'll be able to contribute and help others. You may have answered it like that. Or you may have answered it like this. Jane needs to copy or imitate the behaviour of the rest of her work colleagues in order to not stand out. So when they have a break, she takes a break, and so on. As she becomes more known, she may not want a break, as she may need to complete a task. That is normative influence. So moving on to the actual final question, identify the explanation of conformity shown by Jane. Well, this will depend on what you've answered to the last question. Okay, so obviously part A, or the first answer I gave, was informational social influence, and the second answer I gave was normative social influence. Students find that tricky, and that's where you're going to have to practice, because model answers and Miss or Sir giving you a model answer doesn't necessarily always fit. Okay? So finally, we're going to take a look at Letane and Wolf's 1981 social impact theory. Another explanation of why people conform to social influence was outlined in Letane and Wolf's 1981 social impact theory, which states that the likelihood of an individual conforming to social influence will increase with, firstly, the strength and importance of the influencing group, i.e. how important they are to the individual. And that kind of makes sense, because if people in your social group aren't of interest to you, you're not going to find them that influential. Secondly, the distance between the group and the individual, how close they are in proximity. And finally, the size of the group, i.e. the bigger the group, the greater the influence. One of the first major studies on conformity was carried out by Sheriff in 1935. He made use of what was known as the autokinetic effect. Simply, participants had to say how much a light moved. When placed in groups of 3, the answers tended to be similar, suggesting social influence. However, Sheriff's research was criticised for being too ambiguous, i.e. there was no right or wrong answer. Ash, in 1951, was interested in seeing if people would still conform to social influence if there was a right or wrong answer, i.e. it was an unambiguous situation. Okay, that brings us to the end of this lesson, and I look forward to actually seeing you in the next lesson.